In this video, I'm going to be putting some strength, or at least some metal, back into the bulkhead of this, my 1984 Talbot Matra Rancho. I'm going to be cutting out yet more rusty metal, and I'm going to be fabricating some replacement bodywork out of steel using simple tools, and then I'm going to be welding them back in. As usual, there's going to be flashing lights, questionable music, and there's even going to be some cheap alcohol. So if that sounds like your idea of a party, you're in the right place. Here's the plan of attack. Somebody said I should break this into small pieces, and not the car, but the job. And so I think that's a really good idea. So I think I'm going to do this piece first, this rotten corner here, which overlaps the main part of the bulkhead. So we'll replace that corner. I'll fabricate that. Won't necessarily weld it in yet, but we'll make that. And then once I've made it and got it to fit, I can cut out the under part here, which goes through and is this piece here. You can see the hole in it, but it's sound down below about there. So we'll just replace that top bit of the lower bulkhead and cut those out and weld them together in place. And that'll give some strength to this whole end of the scuttle here. And then what I can do is I can cut out, I don't know whether I'll do it in one piece or two, but cut out along here just above that seam to about in line with where I've put this bracing piece. And then cut below that flange seam as well, again to somewhere about here. Take the spot welds out, take it apart, and put the flat piece in between, sandwiched in between, that then comes forward through here. And that should work. Actually, it's not quite as simple as that, as we'll see in a moment, but it's still a reasonable place to start. Actually, if flawless planning and preparation were really my thing, then this shot would be in focus. My shrinker stretcher seems to have lost some of its bite. I suspect it would work a lot better if it were mounted properly on a stand instead of in this bench vise that wobbles a bit. Starting to get a curve on it. At some point I will fabricate one of those, but it never quite hits the top of my to-do list. And there are quite a lot of things on my to-do list, as you'll know if you're a regular here, plus an absolute mountain of stuff that's nothing to do with old cars at all. This brake disc anvil has built such a variety of inside and outside curves of different radiuses. It's really useful. For that compound curve, I'm going to use this leather shot bag filled with kiln-dried silver sand, and when I've retrieved the piece I'm going to hammer, and then hammer it with, this is my grandfather's old ball-peen hammer. It's probably at least 75 years old and it's still got his initials engraved on the handle. It's a family heirloom. It's not quite right, but it's not far off. Once the bit behind has been cut out, that will fit nicely. So one positive of having a huffing great hole in the bulkhead is you can put a ruler through to measure for a new panel. I've managed to put some unwanted curve into that, but that's very easy to hammer flat with my railway track anvil and a simple planishing hammer. Someone asked about this anvil the other day in the comments, and I just bought it on eBay. You can find them either polished like this or just raw. So there's actually no need to take an angle grinder to your nearest bit of live railway line, which obviously I don't recommend. That needs to marry up with the inner wing repair panel section that I made in the last video. I say made, but actually there's still quite a lot of making still to do, as we'll see in a moment. For now I'm just going to drill out a bunch of holes for plug welding, although we won't be doing any plug welding for a while yet. On this job, I think I've spent more time cutting out the rusty panels that I'm going to be replacing than I have actually making the new panels that I'm going to replace them with. The reason is that I'm trying to be careful not to cut away more than I need to, because I need to keep the reference points and I need to keep some solid metal to attach things to so that I keep all the shape. If I just cut away everything at once, I'm left with a big gaping hole in 3D space, and I won't know what goes where and what it needs to attach to, and then when I finally do the fitting back together of everything, I'll end up with a different shape car. The metal isn't super thin, but it's not great. I think I could get away with just treating it with hydrate 80 or something, but I think that bottom left hand corner here does want to get replaced, so we'll cut that out as well. In the last video I talked about how this bulkhead seam is a triple layer sandwich and rust has eaten away the filling. If I go in here you can see that triple sandwich quite clearly. You've got the lower part of the scuttle here that comes up and goes under there. Then you've got that flat piece that's supposed to go all the way along and form the bottom of the triangular box section, and then you've got the upper part of the bulkhead here as well. So you've got that triple sandwich. You've also got a metric ton of seam sealer in there, which I kind of need to get out or it's going to contaminate the welds. And it does seem to be the main thing holding the bulkhead together, which isn't ideal. Yeah, that's a bit better. A quick trial fit of this piece. Yeah, that's about lined up right there. It's not quite right there though. I need to file that top flat part back a bit, and then hopefully it'll fit a little bit better and that gap will close. As usual, I'm just giving the repair panel a coating of zinc weld-through primer to stop it flash rusting before I get a chance to coat it properly, which I'll do after everything's put back together. Now that it's more or less positioned correctly, I'm going to mark and cut this curve to finish it off, because that's going to be a lot easier to cut while it's still on the bench and off the car. It could be done when it's in place, but there's just a lot of sparks and risk of cutting things I don't mean to, and just awkward access. And then it's time to tack it in place. Even with making some adjustments to the wire speed, it's really easy to blow holes in this metal. It's really quite thin in places. The easiest way to deal with that is to clamp a block of copper behind it to act as a heat sink. I'm very aware that somebody with 20 years of welding experience could probably set the machine up to weld razor blades together, but I'm just going to stick with a copper bar. And that's going a good deal better. It's still going to look pretty ugly, so if you're expecting that Hollywood stacking dimes look, then better to look away now, probably. But it's got good penetration, so it's nice and strong, and I can grind it back as much as I want, and yeah, it's all going to be hidden. So it's better to be thick than good looking, as my mother always told me. And just to prove how thick I am, I've carried on welding past where the copper block is, and so that's blown some more holes. Never mind, they'll fill in again. How's it looking back here? It's not the prettiest, but it's quite strong. And I just need to, where are we? I just need to grind off these lumps of weld here so that I can get the copper heatsink back here flush with the surface, and then weld up this gap. If you look there, you can see where I've got the copper heatsink behind it, so I can fill those couple of holes. If we shine a light at it and then go inside, there we go. I can see where there's any holes. There's just one point, well there's two. One is where I cut through when I was cutting the panel off, but there's just one hole in the weld, otherwise that's all solid. If I go in close, that's the hole there. That's the gap I've missed, and the other hole is down here where I just caught it when I was cutting things out. A little tack weld to close those up, and we're good to go. Fitting this panel has been a right old war. Normally what I do at this point is it's fitted sort of roughly in place, but it's overlapped here and down here as well. Now what I normally do is overlap panels and then just put a couple of tack welds on to hold it in place, and then cut through both panels, and that leaves us a nice even gap of the thickness of the cutting disc that I can weld up. The trouble is, here, because it's got a fold in it and it's across two planes, if I tack it here, then I've got some give that way, but I don't have any movement that way, which I need because it's overlapped here as well. I don't know if that makes sense. I can't tack it along these edges because each one prevents me from lining up the other dimension. So I've just got it loosely clamped in place, and I'm going to cut through and then just hope it kind of rejigs okay. It's been so time consuming this. I've done loads of just fine tweaks to things like the position and the angle of this bend, this fold, and this tab, and there's another tab under here that you can't see. But that's got to all line up, and it's just, because it's fitted in so many different planes and edges, it's just been a real nightmare to do. The actual metal folding isn't difficult, but getting the exact shape right is, yeah, lots of final adjustment and tweaking and stuff. So not a huge amount of fun. I'll be glad when this bit's over.
Well, happily for me, and probably for you too, this will be over soon. Over-ish. Soon-ish.
I'm going to declare that tacked in for now, even though I've got a little bit more fitting to do along that bottom edge. And that means I can start to think about the next step, which is remaking this flat piece. That's the next thing in this, what is it, 4-layer sandwich? 5-layer sandwich even?
It's a 4-layer sandwich in terms of the welding. There is a 5th layer, which is the outer front wing, but that bolts on, so that's just kid stuff. The reason this flat piece rotted out in the first place is that water would get into the box section through the wiper spindles and then have nowhere to go, so it would just collect at the lowest point, which is towards the edges, and quietly eat its way through the metal. Rather than make it the way Simca did and wait for that to happen again, I'm going to do things slightly differently and put a bead through it and a drain hole, so that the water gets channeled towards a new lowest point, which is a hole, and then it can just drain down into the plenum, which does have proper drainage and has not a speck of rust in it, and all will be dandy. I'm also planning to fill it full of cavity wax, and not just the thin and delicate electrophoretic coating that the car had from the factory. Shout out, by the way, to viewer Andy Cogg, who used to be the paint foreman in a specialist Matra Rancho body shop, and pointed out to me that electrophoretic coating is what was used and not powder coating, as I'd said in a previous video. I love learning stuff like that from people who used to work on these cars back in the day, so thank you again to everyone who takes time to put things like that into the comments. I really need to bolt this bead roller down onto the floor, or motorise it, or both, or something. In the meantime, I'll just undercrank the footage 4 times so it just looks fast and smooth. While I'm there, I could probably weld a handle onto that bolt so I don't have to keep looking for a 17mm spanner. Maybe one day I'll get sick of fantasising about pimping up my bead roller and actually do the job. That could even be a video. Let me know down in the comments if Pimp My Tools is a video series you think you might be interested in watching. And here's that cheap alcohol that I was promising you. Yucky da, as they say around here. This is isopropyl alcohol, which is the best thing for getting rid of marker pen marks. And I mean, it doesn't matter here because this is going to be inside a box section, but if you are painting over marker pen, then it has a nasty way of coming through more or less any kind of coating. So this stuff is the best way to get it cleaned off that I've found. And just as a general panel wipe. Having made that channel, which I'm very much hoping the water will find its way into, and drilled a drainage hole, I just need to make sure that that drainage hole is the lowest point. The box section does sort of curve down to around here, but just by hammering out a dimple with a hole in the bottom, we should make doubly sure.
You can see that's now definitely the lowest point, and I just need to clean up that edge and make sure that it's nicely coated in seam sealer. And that should drain away nicely. So with that piece made, that's most of the fabrication done now, which means that the next step is to drill out all the spot welds in this pristine upper bulkhead, and then cut a big section out just so that I can put it back together again. But I think I'm going to do that next time.